Good afternoon and welcome here to Mackey Stadium in Reno, Nevada. It is SMU football time. The Pony Up pregame show with you here live from Reno, Nevada, where the SMU Mustangs and the Nevada Wolfpack will start up the season. 2 hours from now, a 7 o'clock Central Time kickoff that you will have this evening. We will have the broadcast on the radio side at 96.7 and 1310. The Ticket beginning at 6:30 with a pregame show. 7 o'clock is the kickoff for that. And we, being myself, Steve Lansdale, who you can almost see behind me here in our radio booth, and Scott Garner, who's sitting alongside me here. Scott, this is how many years now for the two of us that we have been on this thing together?
This is year 12 or 13,
12
something
years.
like that, yeah.
Only about year 3 doing this.
Yeah, well, we love it, though.
We do, and it's exciting time here, obviously, big time at SMU with the move to the ACC right on the horizon, and, man, things kind of changed a little bit about what we thought about the league this afternoon already, did it not?
You just never know what you're going to get. I was watching some video a few weeks ago just on teams that were sort of in the bottom of the conference, and the one thing that kind of stood out is how much talent even the 17th team, 16th team has. And, boy, Georgia Tech proved that today, didn't they?
They certainly did with a win over Florida State on a last-second field goal over in Ireland as Florida State, ranked 10th in the country, loses an upset in the first game of the year in college football. And as said, we've got Nevada here tonight that SMU is playing on the road. Before we get into the Wolfpack, thought we would start the show off a little bit by reminding where we ended up last year. A glorious season for SMU, something we haven't seen the likes of in nearly 40 years. It was a conference championship season last year, Scott. The Mustangs 8-0 in league play, winning the American Athletic Conference Championship. Their first since they shared one in 1984, first solo title since 1982.
Yeah, it's great to be in the ACC and be back where the Mustangs need to be and should be. First time since the mid-'90s, but that season last year, a lot of folks looked at SMU as being the team to beat, and it's one thing to be that team, but it's another thing to go out and get it done, and they did, and did it without their number one quarterback the last couple of games.
Yeah, of course, Preston Stone with the broken leg suffered in the final regular season game against Navy, and they had to go with Kevin Jennings as the quarterback for the conference championship game, and then for the bowl game against Boston College. They had a battle at the quarterback spot coming into this season. Preston did win that battle and will be the starter here tonight for SMU. Last season, 11-3 overall, 8-0 in conference play. Only the third time ever SMU has had an unbeaten and an untied season in conference play. The other two we weren't around for. It was in 1935 and in 1926. They did it with offense, obviously, 16th in the nation in yards, 8th in points. But the defense was the difference, I think, with what Rhett Lashley put together last year.
No doubt. This was an SMU team last year that gave up less than 18 points a game. That's incredible, and that's what everybody sort of looks at. When you think of SMU, you think of a team that likes to throw the ball around, and even though Rhett Lashley came from the Gus Malzahn school of philosophy, and that he's more balanced than a lot of people think. They do it with defense. It's been that way here at SMU now for the last 5 or 6 years, where you start to build a team from the middle out and from the defensive side out. And that's why Rhett this year has brought in 8 defensive linemen, 8 new guys to play and to rotate in, and they really feel comfortable that they've got a first and second unit that could start on virtually any team in the conference.
Yeah, I think the final count was either 20 or 21 transfers for the program.
Yeah.
13 play on the offensive or defensive line, because going to the ACC, you immediately know that's something that they had to literally beef up going into the new conference.
And that's something that Jeff Choate, the coach for Nevada, has brought to their program, or at least that's what he hopes. They've had back-to-back 2-win seasons, and they want to kind of get back to where they were winning 7, 8, close to double-digit wins a year. They want to try to get back there. That's how you have to do it.
Last year's team, too, some of the oddities I thought was they didn't have a guy rank higher than 24th in the American in tackles. That was Kobe Wilson. And nobody else on the team ranked in the top 50 in the league in tackles per game, because they did it with a little bit of everybody. And they did the same thing at wide receiver than last year. They didn't have a 600-yard receiver or a guy with 45 catches, but the only school in the country last season that had 8 receivers with 300-plus yards receiving on the year.
And a lot of times when something like that happens, or you look at numbers like that, it shows a team that has deficiencies all over the map. But that was anything but true. It just goes to show you that not only does SMU have talent, but they've got talent dispersed in many different places, and we're going to see that this year and probably sooner than later.
Yeah, and at quarterback last year, 3,197 yards, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions for Preston Stone, and that was in just 12 games, remember, after the injury happened. Kevin Jennings then threw for 618, 5 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. That's what amazes me the most, those receiver numbers I gave you a moment ago. Nobody had 600 yards. Nobody had 45 catches. And Jake Bailey was on the Pony Express show with Rhett Lashley with me earlier this week, and he said it. He used the word. A lot of times receivers are prima donnas. Yep. That was his word, not mine, but he's right. And it's amazing to me. Nobody left, except for guys that ran out of eligibility. Everybody came back here at receiver.
You've got 6 guys that could absolutely start for most teams. Many really feel like this is a top 10 wide receiving unit in the country. And you can look at the 2s and some of the 3s and say, man, this guy is really good. But it goes to show you the type of culture that Rhett Lashley has built here at SMU. That's very hard to do. It's very hard for a first-year head coach to do that. But Rhett's got such a great pedigree, and he's learned from so many different guys. We mentioned Gus Malzahn, learning from guys, learning how to build the program. And, man, I thought it was so poignant when Savion Byrd was interviewed during fall camp about what he had to say coming from Oklahoma, new offensive lineman for the Mustangs. And he said he's been absolutely blown away at how the SMU coaching staff and the support staff cares about the players as much off the field as they do on the field. That they're watching what he eats more than he is, and they care almost more than he does. And it's hard to do when you got guys trying to make it to the league.
I don't think there's a guy on this team that's happier every day than Savion Byrd. Every day at practice when I see him, he makes a point of coming over to say hi, give me a fist bump or handshake. You don't see that of offensive linemen.
No, not at all. They're usually grouchy. And you want them to be.
Yes.
You kind of want them to. But I thought, you could take that 15-second clip and show every recruit from now until the end of time, and what a great sales pitch that would be for the SMU program.
A few new guys that we will see here tonight on offense. Look for Brashard Smith at running back, a guy who played more wide receiver than running back at Miami. Rhett Lashley, though, was part of the group that recruited him to Miami, and plans to use him primarily in the backfield. I think we'll see a lot of him tonight. And then on that defensive line, Elijah Roberts is back after leading the team with 10 sacks, but the other 3 starters are all new. And, boy, they got some size with Tank Booker, the Arkansas transfer at the nose, Jared Harrison Hunt, and Jafari Harvey at tackle and end. Those are both a couple of Miami guys that should be some great pieces up front for Scott Simons.
Yeah, you've got 3 guys that should start tonight on that defensive front that are Miami transfers. They played in this league. This is not going to be anything that is going to be new to Roberts, Harrison Hunt, or Harvey. And then you mix in Booker, the Arkansas standout. This is a guy that's had 65 career tackles coming in, 41 games he's played in. He's a really good prospect. This guy is 350 pounds that can move. Most guys 350. You always see, well, they take up space down inside, but this is a guy that's going to make plays for you. He's got really good lateral quickness for a guy that big.
I think he's going to also make the linebackers behind him that much better because he's such a space eater in front of them.
He's going to keep those linemen from getting to the second level consistently, and that's going to do wonders for Wilson and Walker and Kilgore.
We are here at Nevada tonight. This is a program that truly is starting over. The last 2 seasons under Ken Wilson, they went 2-10 both years. So they have replaced him with Jeff Choate. He comes in after 3 years as the co-defensive coordinator at Texas, had a successful run at Montana State at the FCS level from 2016 to 20. This is a guy I suspect, Scott, we're going to see focus a lot on defense and just really wanting to build a hard-nosed attitude in his first year of this program.
Well, he's a defensive guy, and this is a guy that not only comes from a great program in the University of Texas, he was a co-DC down there, but he guided Montana State from a 4-win team to an 11-win team, and they got deep into the playoffs couple of years there, the last 2 years of his tenure. He knows how to coach. All you got to do is watch him, and you talk to him for 20 to 30 minutes, and you see, oh, this guy already knows the ins and outs of coaching. I thought it was a great choice for a program like Nevada that's only won 2 games each of the last 2 years. I love the term that he used, and you and I kind of talked earlier this week and exchanged some text about how he's not totally concerned about winning the game tonight, but he wants to see how his team competes when the chips are down. He talked about competitive character. He's going to be doing more observing tonight than anything else because he wants to see the guys that they can trust in 6 weeks because they're very much unlike SMU. They don't have a lot of time. They've got 5 weeks. They've got 5 games. They've got the extra game. But he's got to see who can compete when the chips are down.
Yeah, the Mountain West only playing 7 conference games this year because they're mixing in a bunch of Pac-2 games. Oregon State and Washington State are running through the Mountain West this year. Brendan Lewis will be their starting quarterback. He started 10 games last year, only threw for 1,300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Defensive coordinator Scott Simons told me yesterday, expect quarterback run game and expect Wildcat too. They've got 2 running backs in Sean Dollars and Savion Red, a Texas transfer that'll probably be lining up at the backfield.
You know, Jeff Choate was sort of bragging on his quarterback this week in that he didn't throw a single interception the whole fall camp. And I thought to myself, you know what, that sounds good, but does that say more about the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side? I don't know.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I heard that. All right, it is SMU and Nevada coming up. 7 o'clock Central Time tonight. And, again, we will have the radio broadcast on 96.7 and 1310 The Ticket, as well as on the SMU app, which is free to download and free to listen. Our pregame show starts at 6:30. I will talk to Rhett Lashley, as well as linebacker Kobe Wilson on that pregame show, and the kickoff is at 7 o'clock. This is the Pony Up pregame show, brought to you by Origin Bank. We do this every week, 2 hours before kick, both home and road games right here on the SMU Mustangs Facebook page. This segment is what we call Rhett to the Point. Some clips from head coach Rhett Lashley from his Wednesday night show, the Pony Express Show with Rhett Lashley. It's every Wednesday night, 7 o'clock at Ozona Grill and Bar, and also here on the SMU Mustangs Facebook page. This team won a championship back in December, the American Athletic Conference Championship. They're not in that league anymore. They're in the ACC now, but Coach Lashley said it still matters.
We're defending champs, and it's kind of weird, we get the opportunity to do that, and then we know we're going to the ACC, so everything has been just so fast since January that we've never really sat around and enjoyed it, but that's okay. And made sure our guys knew from the first day of fall camp, we're defending champs, we're going to act like it, and we're not defending the same conference, and that's fine, but we're still defending champs. There's only about 10 schools in the country that are starting the season this year as defending champs, and we're one of them.
And, of course, they had a quarterback battle here in fall camp between both Kevin Jennings and Preston Stone. It was one that I know some people were kind of surprised about, but Rhett said that's just kind of what they do here.
Had a battle at every position. That's why we never made a big deal about a quarterback battle, because that's just how we run our program. You're always competing, and we're doing the same as coaches. I mean, 11 wins last year is great. We have 0 this year. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't matter if you're Elijah Roberts or you're Justin Osborne competing now at center, or you're Preston and Kevin. We believe in that everywhere, and you're always trying to improve and earn your opportunities, and that's the way it makes everybody around us better. Now, yes, it's unique because it's quarterback, and that's what everybody talks about. You got a guy in Preston who was just incredible. I think his last 5 or 6 games last year, he had a 17-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. Yep. He was playing at a really good clip. He's 11-2 in his career as a starter. You heard Jake talk about him, but then you have what Kevin stepped into and how he performed those last 2 games I thought was really well, and he got all of spring reps. And so it's a unique situation, probably one I've never been in before, where, usually if you say we have a quarterback battle, it means something totally different. That's why we didn't really go there. We have a quarterback luxury. We have 2 guys we know that can lead our team, we can win with. We needed them both last year. Don't know, but I have a feeling we're going to need them both this year. And so we let it play out, and they both did great. Preston earned the opportunity to be the starter through the fall camp. Kevin earned the opportunity to play, and that's how we're going to do it.
And based on what Coach told me yesterday, he does expect to have Kevin Jennings play in the first half even of tonight's game. And he also went on to say the other night at the show how proud he is to have 3 DFW area quarterbacks on his roster. From the Metroplex, Kevin Jennings, of course, from South Oak Cliff, Preston, Parish Episcopal, and Keldrick Luster, the third stringer, who is from McKinney High School. Well, much like the offense, the defense was truly a team effort for Rhett Lashley last year with so many contributors.
Day and age where it's all about the individual being highlighted, and there's not always something wrong with that. It was a true team, and defense was it was obvious when I think we had 20-plus guys have double-digit tackles or something like that, and a bunch of guys with turnovers. And all. I mean, it just, and what it did is the more guys you play, the more confidence everyone on your team has because everybody practices better. They're excited because they know they're going to play. It's not like you're playing 11 and 11 and everybody's just there unless somebody gets hurt. And I think that helped our team morale as we went through the season, and hopefully it helped our development for this season.
Here to open the season at Nevada tonight, and we told you about quarterback Brendan Lewis, who will start for the Wolfpack, and Rhett Lashley says he's pretty familiar with him.
Brendan's a great athlete. I remember him when I was office coordinator here when he's coming out at Melissa. Great athlete. I think he went to Colorado, now he's transferred. Big, athletic, can run, big arm. Those are always guys that scare a defensive coach and staff, and scares the head coach because you can be right and they still make it wrong. And so, if you've coached long enough, you just know that many, many times you've seen a player like that just take over a game and help his team beat somebody when they weren't supposed to. And so we've got to contain him. I think I heard Coach Choate said he didn't throw an interception the entire fall camp. Yeah. I mean, we got he's got our full attention.
That's Rhett to the Point with SMU head coach Rhett Lashley from his weekly show, and we're trying to figure out why I'm barely on here right now. Can you hear me okay, Scott?
Sure.
No, we can't hear Scott either, so we're working on that. This is the Pony Up Pregame Show presented by Origin Bank. Origin Bank knows what strong teams can accomplish by working together. Origin's trusted advisors help you keep your financial goals within reach. Get the right people on your team today at originbank.com, member FDIC. Now it's time for our segment called View from the Sideline. We welcome in the third member of our radio crew, and that would be Steve Lansdale, who he's sitting. Lean over, Steve. There he is right there. We do have a camera, by the way, that we can put Steve on. Steve right there behind us here in the booth at Mackey Stadium as we get ready to play here in Reno, Nevada. And it's a little bit different thing here in Reno because this is something that's not talked about much, Steve. But we are a little bit higher above sea level than we are for sure in Dallas-Fort Worth.
We're a lot higher above sea level. Dallas is about 500 feet above sea level, and Reno, Nevada is about 4,500 feet above sea level. When you think about, to put that in context, think about the Denver Broncos. They play at the stadium they used to call Mile High, and it's still in the name, even though they have a corporate sponsor on that stadium now, it's still in the name because that gets in the heads of opponents. If you don't think playing at altitude matters, go out and climb one of these mountains that's outside Mackey Stadium and see how fast you start huffing and puffing. This will be a test of not only the team's fitness, but their stamina as well. Sean Griswold, the head of the SMU Strength Department, he and his staff do a terrific job training these guys, running a lot, etc. But playing at altitude is one of those things that's very difficult to replicate. You can't really prepare for it, and it probably leads to going even deeper into the rotation than the coaches might want. It'll also impact the kicking game. You may get a little more distance on your punts, your place kicks. Playing at altitude does add to that as well with the thinner air, but it's something that every team that comes into Reno to play Nevada has to deal with.
Now, while it is a little bit more of a challenge, Steve, with the altitude, I got to think the guys are going to like the temperature here a lot better than what they've been experiencing at home. It's about 60 right now, and we'll be in the mid-50s tonight.
Yeah, the players are going to enjoy it. You know who else is going to enjoy it? The sideline reporter, who has never called a game in August with long sleeves on. But there's a very real chance I may be doing that tonight. I will say already this is the most beautiful game weather-wise for an opener since I've been doing this, and that's, I think, longer than the two of you combined.
One thing we always worry about at the start of a season, too, is communication. You got a lot of new guys into the mix here on both sides of the ball, and got to make sure that everybody's on the same page throughout the game.
Yeah, you guys mentioned in the last segment that of the 20-something transfers, 13, 14 of them are linemen. And that's, I think, where it's going to be most significant because especially on the offensive line, that group of 5 blockers only works if you are comfortable with the guy on either side of you. You get the calls made. You dictate the protection based on what you see from the defense. So there is constant communication going back and forth. Justin Osborne taking over at center. It's a new position, but he's a fifth-year senior. He has seen everything, and he will get his guys lined up, and obviously they've been working on that throughout camp. On the defensive line, there's a little bit more element of being able to figure out your assignment and then put your ears back and go. But that communication is going to be critical. It plays into the secondary. It plays into a lot of different different position groups on the field.
One other new communication aspect is going to be the in-helmet communication this year, too. You've got one player per side, offense, defense, that can have the receiver. It's on until 15 seconds is left on the play clock or until they snap the ball. And definitely something I know they've had to do a lot of work on in practice over the last month to get ready for that.
Absolutely. It's when you're in the pros, you're used to it. That's part of the game. But as you said, that is new in college, and every team in America has been trying to work out the kinks. And we saw both teams had their radio communication helmets being inspected before the game tonight. You got to think that at some point, as the early part of the season plays out, there will be some glitches in that system, but it'll end up being a huge benefit to the communication for every team.
One thing I can tell you about that is while Rhett Lashley will be on the radio, obviously, with Preston Stone, they're still signaling in from the sideline because they don't huddle. So somebody besides Preston has to know the play, and so they will still be doing signals from the sideline as well, offensively. All right, if what we think is going to happen here tonight happens here tonight, how deep do you think that they could go in this roster this evening, Steve?
I think you'll see a lot of players who made the trip actually get on the field. You mentioned there's 3 quarterbacks that the coaches like, and they would like nothing better than we know Kevin Jennings is going to get in at some point, but they would like nothing better than to get some snaps for Keldrick Luster as well. The offensive line, you've got a bunch of big veteran players, but if you talk to the coaches during camp, there's 8 or 9 or 10 guys who you could make an argument for deserving some real playing time. So, yes, that is a position group where you like to have 5 guys and leave them together and let them play together as much as possible, but you've got a lot of guys still vying for jobs. And then on the defensive line, the coaches think they're 3 deep, maybe even 4 deep. And in the season opener, and again, playing at altitude, I think you're going to see a lot of defensive linemen getting into this game as they try to get after these Nevada quarterbacks.
That is Steve Lansdale's view from the sideline. We'll have Steve back here momentarily when we do our picks of games coming up in just a moment. It's the Pony Up pregame show presented by Origin Bank. I am Rich Phillips here in Reno, Nevada, along with Scott Garner, who will be on the radio broadcast with me on the ticket tonight beginning at 6:30. And it is time to meet the enemy, the Nevada Wolfpack, the 7th all-time meeting. The series tied 3-3. The last meeting, Scott, it was one of the finest moments I ever had the chance to participate in as a broadcaster here at SMU because it was the end of a 25-year bowl game drought, and SMU routed them 45-10 in the Hawaii Bowl in 2009.
Yeah, this is a program now that's they've had a hard last 2 years. They win 2 games last year, win 2 games the year before that. But again, as we talked about before, they're not unaccustomed to seeing this team win 7, 8, and even more than that. So they want to try to get back to that, and Jeff Choate wants them to focus on the defensive side to start. And obviously, he's going to be looking at a lot of different things. But you mentioned Brendan Lewis. Lewis, again, played at Colorado, started for the Buffs. This is a guy that is trying to work some kinks out. They say that he's probably the hardest working guy in the whole locker room. He's there before everybody. He leaves after everybody leaves. So we'll see how he performs tonight. But you never can tell because game speed is so much different. But they're certainly hoping that he betters the 2 touchdowns he put up last year.
By the way, these 2 schools played every year from 2000 to 2004 as members of the WAC together.
Yep.
SMU's never won here. The last trip here is one I haven't gotten out of my mind yet, 12-9. That was the loss in 2003. It's I'll tell you about that another time. It stings still.
I'll bet.
A little bit. Part of what Jeff Choate's done is really start over. They've got something like 54 new players on their roster and basically completely starting over at wide receiver. They only had 5 returnees that even caught 1 ball last season, and the guy who caught the most is their running back. The most that a receiver caught was Ashton Hayes with 5. I think one guy they're counting on a lot, Scott, is going to be Jaden Smith. a huge receiver who transferred in from Tarleton State at 6'6". A couple years ago, he had 48 catches and 10 touchdowns at Tarleton.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dollars and Smith. Smith's got some great hands, but he's tall, 6'6", 210, can catch it in traffic. Montana State and Tarleton State transferred, so this is his third school. You mentioned the 48 catches. They're going to be leaning on him a lot, but I'm interested to see how Sean Dollars performs tonight. He's improved a ton since camp began. He's an Oregon transfer. This is a Nevada team, though, that has not had a 1,000-yard rusher in almost 10 years. Been a long time. We'll see those two probably be their two go-to guys tonight.
Defensively, as I have disappeared again here, defensively they are led by their two linebackers, Drew Watts as their leading returning tackler. And how about this one? Tonjiaki Mateolona. He's a fifth-year guy at linebacker,
Yes.
and that's just one of the many ones I get to work in tonight.
Yeah, had 54 tackles last year. Mateoloma, 1 sack, had 2 tackles for a loss. This guy's got great closing speed. It's those two linebackers that are really the big heart and soul of the defense. The defensive interior, not great. They're worried about that a little bit. We'll see how that turns out tonight. Johnson and the other defensive end are solid but not outstanding. So we'll see what SMU does today. It'll be interesting to see how the Mustangs attack this. I think Jeff Choate is expecting a lot of gap scheme from SMU's offensive line insofar as that they will pull linemen. Didn't do that a whole lot last year. Did it some. But we'll see how much SMU does that tonight.
They gave up 33.4 points per game last year. There's no way a defensive coach is going to stand for that to continue on this year. Let me give you my stat of the week here for SMU at Nevada tonight. How about 17-1?
That's the TDI-INT ratio for Preston Stone.
Over the last 7 games last season, 17 touchdowns to 1 interception. And you remember, he threw 5 picks the first 5 games, including 2 with no touchdowns versus TCU. And he ended at 28-6 by the end of the season. 17-1. I mean, we were wondering early in the season. I was like, man, he's got to cut down on those mistakes. Boy, he did.
He did. And he did it mostly by not trying to do too much, letting the game come to him. And Rhett Lashley kind of joked, I think, with you about, if we can just get him to keep from going backwards, that'll be some progress there. But that's a big deal, to not turn the ball over, obviously. But this has been such a bone of contention and sort of a point that so many people have made. SMU did not win a Power 4 game last year. Got 10 of those on the schedule this year. It won't be tonight, but this is, won't be.
Wow.
Didn't mean to startle you there, Rich. We've not seen that. Hey, Steve's
all 8
seen
of those
that.
conference games. Yeah, they count that way, too.
Steve was around during the Southwest Conference days, but this is going to be different for most. If you're not 40 years old, you don't remember SMU as a Power 4 team. You just don't. 1996 was the last year of the Southwest Conference.
If you're only 40, you really don't either, by the way.
Well, that's true, too.
It was the end of times at that point in the school history. But, hey, it's a long climb back, and we're happy to be at that point in the ACC. All right, let's get to our Pick'em feature here, brought to you by Origin Bank. We'll pitch 5 games from elsewhere around the country each week on the show. And it was a little bit difficult this week because there's only like 4 games today, and most of them have already happened. I think Hawaii and Delaware State's the only one after us. But Thursday and Friday is loaded with games next week, so let's get to that here. And we pick all these games just straight score, winner, loser in that. And we're going to start off Thursday night, 7 o'clock. Team out of the ACC, North Carolina's playing at Minnesota. UNC 8-5 last year. They lost the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Minnesota was 6-7. And they went to the Quick Lane Bowl and won it. And you think, well, how did they get there? They only had 5 wins. They were the highest in the academic progress rating. There weren't enough 6-win teams to go around, so that's how they got in. But, Steve, man, big turnover for North Carolina because they lost quarterback Drake May to the NFL draft. And Mac Brown says he's planning to play 2 guys and would like to play 2 guys all year.
It is. It's obviously a huge turnover. Drake May was the 3rd pick in the draft. He's now up in Foxborough, working out with the Patriots, and he was everything to that offense a year ago. North Carolina hasn't won a season opener on the road in 22 years. And this game, which is also the gold out night in Minnesota, features a couple of pretty studly running backs. Minnesota's Darius Taylor, North Carolina's Amarian Hampton. Both teams also have new defensive coordinators. And for Minnesota, you've got a transfer quarterback, Max Brosner, from New Hampshire. But he is playing behind a pretty solid offensive line. He's playing at home, and Minnesota gets the win tonight.
All right. Well, next Thursday.
Sorry, Thursday.
Scott?
It'd be really good if you got it tonight.
Really impressive. North Carolina, they win this game easily last year, but they're not as strong on defense this year. A little bit surprised about that, but that's true. Minnesota much improved on offense this season, or at least that's what they say. They're going to get back to Gopher football. They did not have a good year last year, as you outlined, Rich. But Minnesota, they're probably going to have to score 30 to win this game, and I think they do it. As much as I respect Mac Brown, I think the Golden Gophers pick up the win.
I'm not sure they have quite that high hopes at Minnesota this year. They were down. They made a bowl game, but again, a 5-win team last year. I'll take North Carolina on the road in this opener. Thursday night, this is a really interesting one at 7 o'clock as North Dakota State, an FCS team, plays at Colorado. Now, the Buffaloes 4-8 last year under Deion Sanders, and he's already battling the media here before they started their first practice.
He is.
North Dakota State, get this. They are 7-4 all-time against FBS teams. A 3-point loss to Arizona in 2020 snapped a 6-game winning streak that they had against FBS schools. And, Steve, from 2011 to 21, they only won 9 national titles there.
Yeah, North Dakota State is pretty much the standard for FCS teams, and they're always good, as you said. They've fared very well against FBS. Folsom Field at Colorado is a very good home field advantage. It will be packed. They do have Ralphie the Buffalo come running out before kickoff. And to your point, Deion Sanders will get his team worked up by talking about how the media is out to get them and the world is out to get them. And, everybody hates poor little old Colorado. And it's not true, but it'll be enough because they have enough elite athletes. They'll get the victory.
Scott?
Yeah, they finished the year 1-8 last year after a really good start. They beat TCU early on. Everybody thought TCU was going to be great last year. Ended up not being. Deion, as you mentioned, already fighting with the media. I think it can't be good for that program. No question about it. Last year, Colorado's problem, they gave up so many points, 35 points per game. That was 10th worst in the nation. But I do think they'll have enough to beat North Dakota State Thursday.
If this game was in week 3, I would take North Dakota State. But being in week 1, I think Deion will get his team, like Steve was saying, he'll have them fired up. It's us against the world. If it was in week 3, I think North Dakota State is terrible for any FBS school who's not there to schedule.
I agree.
You don't want to play them. They're dangerous.
You play them, you can't win. You win, you're supposed to win. You lose, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But hey, they could win though. They still have they could do it.
But being that I think Deion will have them fired up, I'll take Colorado in this one. 6 o'clock on Friday, one of our old bunkmates, Temple, out of the American, plays at 16th-ranked Oklahoma. OU 10-3, losing in the Alamo Bowl last year. Temple was 3-9. We saw them lose 55-0 at home to our guys, SMU. And a new era at quarterback here, Steve, for the Sooners with Jackson Arnold out of Denton Guyer taking over.
They could start you or me at quarterback. It's not going to make a difference tonight. Oklahoma beat SMU last year, and Temple, we know how Temple compares to SMU. This isn't going to be close. Oklahoma's better this year than last year and is going to blow Temple out.
Scott?
Yeah, Temple didn't win a road game last year, and OU didn't lose a home game. This is a much better OU team, no question. Jackson Arnold, what a great quarterback he was in high school with Guyer, and he just keeps getting better and better each year. He's fantastic. OU in a blowout.
He must be good if they weren't too upset to move on from the guy that everybody thinks is going to win the Heisman Trophy this year,
Great
right?
point.
Yeah, so, I'll take Oklahoma in their opener. Also, Friday night at 9:30, TCU goes out west to face one of our new conference opponents, Stanford. TCU, very disappointing 5-7 last season after playing in the national championship game the year before. Stanford has been 3-9 for 3 straight years, Steve.
You're right. TCU came back to earth last year with going 5-7 and got to watch SMU and the rest of a lot of teams around the country playing in bowl games while they stayed home. But to your point, Stanford, 3 wins in each of the last 3 seasons. They're not going to be able to match up with TCU. Frogs win.
Steve? Or Scott?
Yeah, no doubt.
That's you. Okay.
You mentioned 3 straight 3-win seasons, no doubt. They'll be better. Now, TCU's going to be better, too. Many had them projected in the low 40s in terms of national rankings, so It should be a much improved TCU team, and I think they get it done next week.
Yeah, and TCU going with Josh Hoover out of Rockwall Heath as their full-time starting quarterback this season. We'll see them in Week 3 at Ford Stadium. I will take TCU over Stanford as well. And then we are going to pick one Saturday game because it'll happen before we do this show next Saturday because it's a big one. At 11 a.m. next Saturday, Clemson is number 14 in the nation at number 1 Georgia. This is actually at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Clemson 9-4, won the Gator Bowl last year. Georgia 13-1. Their only loss was in the conference championship game, and they didn't go to the playoff because of it. At one point last season, Clemson was 4-4 before turning it around, and I think, Steve, that Dabo Swinney's got a little chip on his shoulder this year.
He does have a chip on his shoulder. You mentioned it's at the Mercedes-Benz Dome, and technically that's billed as a neutral site game. Make no mistake, Clemson travels well, but this will be a Georgia home game. Yes, Dabo Swinney will have them playing with a chip on their shoulder, but you can bet Georgia also has a chip on its shoulder for being left out of the playoff. Clemson's always good. Clemson's always one of the heavyweights in this conference. They have solid players pretty much everywhere across the board. Georgia has All-Americans and All-Conference players who are headed to the NFL at most positions. Georgia wins.
Scott.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 4-4 record to start. You know, I counted up. I looked back at the conference record for the ACC teams last year. I was shocked. Only 5 of the 17 teams had a plus 500 conference record last year. This conference beats up on itself. Everybody knows this. You'll have more parity this year than in a long time in the ACC. We'll talk more about that, but it should be a good game. When you're number 1 and you're facing 14 and everybody's expecting a 2-score game, man, you are pretty good. Carson Beck, I couldn't believe, I was looking at the numbers, he completed 73% of his passes last year. You know, and they're talking about Preston Stone hoping to get him to 65%, I believe, with his completion percentage, trying to be a little bit more efficient, but 73%, unbelievably, accounted for 28 touchdowns as well. Georgia's going to be too much.
Yeah, Carson Beck, you mentioned the Georgia quarterback. He's among the favorites to being picked to win the Heisman this year. I will take Georgia in that one. That is our Pick'em segment this week. Special thanks to our friends at Origin Bank for sponsoring the Pony Up pregame show this year. Origin Bank knows what strong teams can accomplish. By working together, Origin's trusted advisors help keep your financial goals within reach. Get the right people on your team today at originbank.com, member FDIC. Scott, let's get a couple final thoughts for tonight's game. SMU and Nevada with a 7 o'clock kickoff over on 96.7 and 1310 The Ticket. Give us some keys to success for SMU tonight.
Sure. Thank you, Rich. No, the one thing that you notice when you go out to fall camp, when you watch camp, you notice that SMU likes to play with tempo. They were really trying to go fast, particularly after explosive plays, and that's hard to do. And I think tonight's game, when you see the explosives, remember last year the Mustangs were tied for 15th in the country. They had 135 explosive plays, but after an explosive play, SMU wants to go fast. Can they execute after they have an explosive play? That's so important. They want to improve on that, so that's going to be key number 1 for the Mustangs, see if they can improve on that. One thing that I noticed, too, watching Florida State and Georgia Tech earlier today, early in the game, both teams had such a hard time making tackles because most teams know that you don't tackle much in practice these days. Last 5 years, teams have gotten away from that. We'll see how these two teams tonight, SMU and Nevada, just tackle. Can you tackle well? That's going to be a point of emphasis. And then key number 3, you want to become acclimated to game speed. SMU probably going to be playing both quarterbacks tonight. Maybe see Luster, too, that number 3 quarterback for SMU. Get them acclimated to the game speed. I don't care how much you practice and how much you go team during your workouts. It's just not like playing another team of your caliber and different players. So let's see if the Mustangs can really put the wheels on and get ready for week 2, because the first 2 weeks are the only 2 really that you have, because they're going to be coming fast and furiously after the first 2 games.
All right, that'll do it for week 1 here on the Pony Up pregame show presented by Origin Bank. Our next show will be next Saturday, 5 o'clock. We will do it here on the SMU Mustangs Facebook page. You can also come out and see it live. We will be at Armstrong Fieldhouse. That's the indoor practice facility. It is open to any and all that are coming to the game on Saturday when SMU hosts Houston in the opener. Our radio broadcast tonight, Sports Radio 96.7 and 1310 The Ticket, as well as the SMU app, where it's free to download and free to listen to the game. 6:30 is our pregame show. Rhett Lashley and Kobe Wilson are my guests on the pregame tonight. 7 o'clock is the kickoff. It's one of the most exciting seasons we've had in years for the SMU Mustangs, so be sure and join us for that. We thank Kern Engineering back here for us, keeping us on. Yeah, no, we do thank you, Kern. You did some magical things back there during the show here tonight. Steve Lansdale behind me. For Scott Garner, I'm Rich Phillips, and let's all pony up.